The sound was dangerous here. Not dangerous like weapons or bombs, but dangerous in a way that could change a person's soul. At least, that's what the authorities on Varelia had told everyone since birth. On this cold silver world, music was banned. Any rhythm, any melody, even the hum of a human tune was considered a crime. And yet, in the dark corner of an empty cargo bay, a young Varelian girl named Soren was holding something forbidden in her trembling hands, small, scratched, rectangular. Device she had found inside a shipment from the Terran colonies. The device was old, battered, but its screen still glowed faintly. Her pale six-fingered hands traced the strange word written on it in bold letters. MP3 player. Soren's large, translucent eyes flicked toward the bay doors, listening for patrol drones. None came. She pressed the button. A blast of electric. Guitar ripped through the tiny speaker. She gasped. Every nerve in her body shaking as the sound crashed into her ears like a wave. She had never heard anything like it. Powerful, alive. It wasn't the slow, dull hum of machinery or the metallic whispers of Varelia's wind. This sound had color. It had teeth. Her heart pounded. The drums kicked in, the bass thumped. And the voice deep, rough, and human shouted words she didn't understand. But she didn't need to understand them. The feeling burned through her chest like fire. For a moment, she forgot where she was. She forgot the rules, forgot the risk. She pressed the device against her ear, closing her eyes. Her body began to sway, her head moving in small jerks to the beat. Her feet tapped against the cold floor. That was when she heard it's the sharp, metallic whir of a patrol drone outside the bay. Her eyes snapped open. The music kept playing, loud, reckless, unstoppable. The drone's sensor beam swept past the crack in the bay door. If it heard even a trace of the sound, it would send a silent signal to the enforcers, and she would be dragged away before she could even explain what she had found. She slammed her thumb on the button. The music stopped. Her breath was ragged. Her fingers shook as she stuffed the device deep into her coat pocket. The drone passed. No alarm sounded, so RYN stood in the silence, her pulse racing. She could still feel the music vibrating in her bones. She hated the silence, now it felt empty, dead. She knew she should destroy the device. That's what anyone else would do. But her hand refused to move. She had to hear it again, on the other side of the galaxy, in a dim, crowded space station bar. A human named Jack Corwin was playing the same song that had just shaken Soren's world. Jack was a drifter, a trader, who moved from station to station, selling whatever cargo kept his ship's fuel tanks full. He had an old guitar on his lap, and a small group of miners, smugglers, and mechanics gathered around him. The air smelled of oil, cheap liquor, and ozone from the station's flickering power conduits. Jack strummed hard, his calloused fingers sliding along the steel strings. His voice was rough but warm, telling stories through the song about rebellion, freedom, and fire. The miners clapped along. A pair of alien dock workers banged their mugs on the table in rhythm. Jack grinned. He had grown up with rock in his blood. His father had played in dive bars across Earth's broken cities. His mother had taught him the first chords before she passed. To Jack, music wasn't just entertainment, it was survival. He didn't know that somewhere, light years away, a young alien girl was hearing those same chords for the first time. Breaking a law older than her parents. Back on Varelia, Soren couldn't sleep. The image of the human's voice, the sound of that strange, wild instrument, haunted her. In school, the instructors always told them why music was forbidden. They said that long ago, sound had been used to start uprisings, to stir emotions, too strong for the mind to control. They claimed that music could lead to chaos, rebellion, even war. Soren didn't know if that was true. All she knew was that for the first time in her life, she had felt alive. She slipped the MP3 player from her pocket. Her room was dark, the only light coming from the cold glow of the city outside her window. The towers of Varelia stood silent, their silver walls reflecting the dim starlight. No one here laughed. No one sang. She pressed the button again. The music roared back to life. This time, she turned the volume low so no one could hear. She curled under her blanket, holding the speaker close. The guitar screamed, the drums pounded, and the human voice called to something deep inside her that she didn't know existed. She felt like she was falling into another world, one where colors were brighter, where people moved without fear, where sound could break chains. When the song ended, she played it again and again. 2 days later, Soren's father told her they had a visitor. She came into the living chamber and froze. Standing there was a tall human man with a worn leather jacket and a guitar case slung over his back. "This is Captain Corwin," her father said, his voice formal. "He's here to discuss trade routes." Jack nodded politely, his eyes scanning the silver room, the neatly arranged furniture, the absence of anything personal or warm. He felt the cold rules of this world. In the air, Soren's eyes darted to the guitar case. She knew that shape. She knew that sound. Her chest tightened. Jack caught her staring and smiled faintly. "You like music?" he asked. Her father stiffened. "We do not discuss such things here." Soren's heart pounded. She glanced at her father, then back at Jack. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Yes," she said. Jack tilted his head slightly, a spark in his eyes. "Then maybe," he said quietly, "you and I should talk later." She didn't know it yet, but that single sentence would change both their lives and maybe the fate of her entire planet. Soren couldn't stop thinking about the human. That night, she barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the worn guitar case over his shoulder, the way his eyes had met hers, like they knew a secret. No one here ever looked at her like that. No one here ever spoke of music without fear. The next morning, she heard her father in the main room talking with Captain Corwin about trade contracts. Their voices were formal, clipped, nothing unusual. But every few minutes, she thought she could hear the faint rattle of the guitar case when he shifted in his chair. She sat in her room, her hands fidgeting, staring at the MP3 player hidden under her pillow. She wanted to hear more, but she also wanted to hear it from him, the human, who carried music openly like it wasn't poison. When her father left to take a call from the Port Authority, the human's voice drifted down the hallway. "You can come out," he said. Soren stepped out slowly. He was leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, a faint grin on his lips. "You've heard it, haven't you?" he said in a low voice. She nodded, her heart hammering. Once it was. She searched for words. It was like breathing for the first time. Jack's grin widened. "That's rock for you." "Rock," she repeated, the word strange but solid on her tongue. He tapped his guitar case. This is how we make it. Would you like to hear it the way it's meant to be heard?" Her eyes widened. "Here. That's dangerous," he finished for her. "Yeah, I figured. But some things are worth the risk." They slipped quietly into the back storage room while her father was still on his call. Jack shut the door and set the guitar case on a metal crate. When he opened it, the gleam of polished wood caught the dim light. "This is called an electric guitar," he said, running a hand over the strings. "Well, technically, I've got it set up to work without an amp for now, but it'll still sing." He strummed a chord. The sound was richer, fuller, more alive than anything from the little MP3 player. The strings rang in the air like bright fire. Soren's breath caught. Her body leaned forward, as if drawn by invisible hands. Jack began to play. His fingers danced across the strings, coaxing the guitar into growls and wails. It was a song. About freedom, about running into the night and never looking back. She didn't understand the words when he sang, but her chest ached like she did. She moved without thinking, her head nodding, her hands tapping against her legs, her feet shifting on the floor. When the last note faded, the silence that followed felt almost painful. "That," Jack said softly, "is what they don't want you to have." "Why?" she whispered. "Because music wakes people up," he said. "It makes them feel things they've been told not to feel. And once they feel it, they start asking questions. Dangerous questions." A sharp chime sounded in the main hall. Jack's expression changed, instantly alert, guarded. "That's the enforcer entry tone," Soren said quickly. "Guess our little jam session's over," he muttered, snapping the guitar back into its case. Her father's voice called from the hall. "Captain Corwin, the inspection team is here. They require all cargo documentation." Jack slung the case over his back. "I've got nothing to hide," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You stay quiet." Soren stayed. In the storage room, peeking through the crack in the door, as three tall enforcers in silver armor stepped into the house. Their blank helmets reflected the room like cold mirrors. One of them scanned Jack's guitar case. "Unregistered object. Identify." "Musical instrument," Jack said casually. "Terran origin. Harmless." "Music is prohibited on Varelia," the enforcer replied flatly. "Possession is punishable by seizure and fine." "Good thing I'm just passing through," Jack said. "You can't apply local law to an off-world trader in transit. You know the Treaty of Orin Prime?" It was a long pause. The enforcers exchanged glances through their helmet hoods. Finally, one stepped back. "We will note the violation and monitor your activities. Do not play it here." "Wouldn't dream of it," Jack said smoothly. The enforcers left. That night, Soren lay in bed, the city outside silent as always. But inside her head, the music still played. Every strum, every drum beat from the MP3 player replayed like a secret heartbeat. She could not silence. The human had risked trouble just to show her. She decided she couldn't. Let that be the last time. The next day, she found him in the port's loading bay, checking the crates on his small cargo ship. "You're leaving?" she said, trying not to sound desperate. "Tomorrow," Jack replied, glancing up. "Gotta run to the fringe worlds." "Take me." "With you." He froze. "Kid, I can't just... I'm not a kid," she said firmly. "And I can't stay here. Not now, not after this." He looked at her for a long moment. "You don't understand what you're asking. The second you leave this planet without clearance, you're a fugitive. You can't come back." "I don't care," she said. "I want to hear more. I want to see the places where people don't hide music, where they don't live in silence." Jack sighed, running a hand over his face. "You're gonna get me in a lot of trouble. You know that?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Finally, he nodded once. "All right, be here at dawn. We leave before the patrol cycle." That night, Soren packed a small bag. She left behind her clothes, her books, even her ID tag. The only thing she kept was the MP3 player. When the twin suns rose, she slipped through the streets unseen, her hood low over her face. She reached the port just as Jack was sealing the last crate. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded. The ramp closed behind her, cutting off the sight of her cold. Silent city forever. In the cockpit, Jack flicked switches, the engines humming to life. "Next stop," he said with a grin. "Somewhere you can turn the volume." Up without looking over your shoulder, Soren settled into the seat, clutching the MP3 player. For the first time in her life, she felt like the silence was behind her. The jump through hyperspace felt like falling into a dream. Soren sat in the co-pilot's seat, staring at the swirling blue tunnel outside the viewport. She had never left Virelia before. Her world had always been cold metal corridors and silent streets. Now she was speeding toward somewhere she couldn't even imagine. Jack leaned back in the pilot's chair, tapping his fingers on the armrest in time with a tune only he could hear. Every so often, he hummed under his breath. Soren caught herself watching him, noticing how natural it seemed for him to carry music inside him without fear. First stop, Jack said, is a little place called Haven's Port. No rules about music there. In fact, the whole station is one big concert, if you know where to look. Soren's eyes widened. A whole place where people can play music. All the time. Not just play, Jack said with a grin. They live it. Breathe it. You'll see. When the ship dropped out of hyperspace, the view made her gasp. Haven's Port hung in the darkness like a giant wheel of lights, spinning slowly against the stars. From this distance, she could already see the bright flashes of neon and the colorful bursts of HOLO signs. As they got closer, the cum crackled. Freighter Drifter's luck, you are cleared for Dock 42. Welcome back, Corwin. Jack winked at her. Told you they know me here. The docking clamps locked, and the airlock hissed open. The moment Soren stepped onto the station's main promenade, her senses were hit with a shock sound. Not just one sound, hundreds. Music blasted from open shop doors, echoing down hallways, thumping in the floors. Different styles clashed and blended together: fast beats, slow ballads, roaring guitar, soft alien flutes. Voices shouted, laughed, sang. She froze, overwhelmed. Jack leaned closer. Breathe it in. This is what freedom sounds like. They walked through the crowded promenade. Soren saw humans, aliens, and hybrids moving together in colorful clothes, some with glowing tattoos pulsing to the beat. Halads floated in the air, chewing bands playing on stages surrounded by cheering crowds. Everywhere she looked, someone was moving to music, tapping a foot, swaying their hips, snapping their fingers. Even the station's cleaning drones hummed, in rhythm with whatever played nearby. A group of street performers had set up near a cafe. One human banged on a metal drum, while an insectoid alien strummed something like a harp made of glowing wires. A third, tall and blue-skinned, sang in a voice so deep it made the floor vibrate. Soren couldn't stop staring. Jack noticed. Want to see the real heart of it? She nodded quickly. They wound through back corridors until they reached a set of heavy doors. Bass rumbled from behind them, like thunder trapped inside. Jack pushed the doors open. The room beyond was dark, except for flashing lights and a massive stage. A human band was mid-song, the crowd packed shoulder to shoulder, jumping and shouting. Guitars screamed, drums pounded, and the singer's voice soared over it all like a battle cry. Soren felt the sound hit her chest. It was nothing like the small MP3 player. This was alive. This was fire. Her feet moved without thought, carrying her closer to the stage. Jack leaned in, careful. First time in a live pit can be intense. But she didn't hear him. The music wrapped around her like heat. She moved with the crowd, her body matching the beat, her heart racing. It felt like the world had color for the first time. After the set ended, Jack led her backstage. The band was packing up, laughing and sweaty. This your friend, Corwin? One of them asked, a woman with bright red hair and a guitar slung over her back. Yeah, Jack said. First time off Virelia. The woman's eyebrows shot up. Virelia? That's the no-music planet, right? Soren nodded, a little embarrassed. Well, the woman said, welcome to the noise. She handed Soren a small device leak. And silver. This is a pocket player, holds hundreds of songs. On the house, Soren stared at it, stunned. "You're just giving this to me?" "Music's meant to be shared," the woman said. Later, back on the ship, Soren plugged the player into the ship's small speaker system. The cabin filled with song after song, fast rock, slow blues, alien synth, human folk. She stayed up all night listening, her eyes wide, soaking in every note. But she didn't notice the tiny blinking light on the bottom of the device. Far away, in the secure office of a Varelian enforcement agent stationed on Haven's port, a monitor lit up. A red icon marked a signal the pocket player had been tagged long ago during a raid on an illegal music shipment. The agent leaned forward, reading the ID log. "Varelian citizen. Soren Kellis," he murmured. "And she's traveling with human trader Jack Corwin." He smiled coldly. "Perfect. We can make an example of them." By the next day, Jack had a new shipment ready. "We'll hit 2 more stations before heading to the Terran core. You'll love Earth music everywhere." Soren's eyes sparkled at the thought. But just as they were about to leave, the port's docking bay alarms blared. Doors slammed shut and red lights flashed. Jack swore. "That's a lockdown." A voice echoed over the Varelian enforcement, "Boarding Team 2. Dock 42. Detain the human trader and Varelian citizen immediately." Soren's blood ran cold. Jack grabbed her arm. "Time to see if you can run as fast as you dance." The docking bay shook with the sound of heavy boots. Soren's pulse raced as the metallic thud of enforcer armor echoed closer. Red emergency lights flashed against the walls, making the air seem even tighter. Even hotter, Jack was already moving. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the side maintenance corridor. "They'll hit the main door first. We've got 30 seconds, maybe less." "They're here for me," she said, her voice shaking. "They're here for us, Jack." Corrected. "You're not facing this alone." They slipped into the narrow corridor, the smell of oil and hot wiring filling Soren's nose. Jack ducked under a low pipe, his boots splashing through a shallow puddle. Behind them, the sound of the main docking doors crashing open made her flinch. "Corwin," a metallic voice called. "Surrender the Varelian and your vessel." Jack smirked over his shoulder. "Not happening." They turned sharply into a service hatch, Jack kicking the release with practiced ease. The hatch opened into a cramped ventilation shaft. "In there," he said, "so are why," and hesitated. "Won't they scan for us?" "Sure," Jack said, climbing in first. "But by the time they figure it out, we'll be halfway across the station." The shaft was hot and loud, every vent carrying the rumble of the station's engines. Soren crawled behind him, clutching the small pocket player in her coat. Even now, with armored soldiers chasing her, she refused to let it go. Jack paused at a grate, peering down. Their lower cargo tunnel. No security yet. He dropped through, landing softly, and motioned for her to follow. She hit the ground. Beside him, her knees aching from the fall. They ran. The cargo tunnel was dim, lit only by strips of flickering lights along the floor. They passed stacks of sealed crates and pallets wrapped in plastic. Somewhere above, muffled voices shouted orders. Jack stopped at an old service door and keyed in a code. The lock clicked. "This way." The door opened into a cluttered maintenance bay, the smell of fuel thick in the air. At the far end sat a small, rust-colored shuttle barely big enough for 2 people. Soren stared. "That thing flies." Jack grinned. "It flies angry, but it flies." They climbed inside. Jack's hands flew over the controls, powering up. The engines. Outside, the sound of boots grew louder again. The enforcers had found their trail. The shuttle's engine roared to life, rattling the walls. The door burst open and 3 armored figures stepped in, weapons raised. Jack slammed the throttle forward. The shuttle shot toward the half-open bay doors, the enforcer shot sparking against its hull. "Hold on," Jack shouted. "So are Y and gripped." The seat as the shuttle cleared the doors and plunged into open space. The black expanse stretched around them, dotted with stars. Behind them, the docking bay shrank into the distance. Soren turned to Jack, breathless. "We made it." Jack shook. His head, "Not yet. They'll have patrol ships after us in minutes." As if on cue, the radar lit up with 3 fast-moving blips. Soren swallowed hard. "What do we do?" Jack smirked, flipping switches. "We give them a chase they won't forget." The patrol ships closed in, firing bright streaks of energy. Across their path, Jack jerked the shuttle in sharp stomach-dropping turns. The stars blurred as they weaved through the debris field of old cargo containers drifting in orbit. "Can't they shoot us down?" Soren shouted over the roar of the engines. "They'll try," Jack said, "but they're not as crazy as me." One of the patrol ships tried to cut them off, swooping low. Jack spun the shuttle sideways, scraping so close to a container that sparks flew. The pursuing ship slammed into the debris and spun out of control. Soren gripped the dash, her heart hammering. "You're insane." "Best compliment I've gotten all week," Jack said with a grin. The remaining 2 patrol ships stayed on. Jack pushed the throttle to its limit, the shuttle's frame rattling like it might come apart. Ahead, a dense asteroid cluster glimmered in the faint starlight. "We're going through there," Soren asked. "Unless you want to go back." Jack said. The asteroids loomed closer, spinning slowly, their jagged surfaces catching the light. Jack dove between them, weaving through gaps barely wider than the shuttle's wings. The patrol ships followed, but the tight turns slowed them down. Soren's stomach lurched as they shot between 2 massive rocks, a flash of light behind them. Marked one of the patrol ships, clipping an asteroid and spiraling away. "One left," Jack said. The final patrol ship was still gaining. Jack reached over, flicking open a panel above Soren's head. "See that lever? When I say pull it, what does it do?" "Let's hope you don't find out the hard way," Jack said. The last patrol ship lined up for a shot. Jack yanked the shuttle into a sharp roll. Now Soren pulled the lever. A burst of bright flares exploded from the shuttle's tail, blinding the pursuing pilot. The patrol ship swerved hard, barely avoiding an asteroid, then vanished from the radar. Jack let out a slow breath. That's all of them. They cleared the asteroid field and drifted into open space again. Jack eased back on the throttle. Soren sat back, her hands trembling. "I've never done anything like that." Jack grinned. "That's life outside your silent little planet. Dangerous, loud, and worth every second." She looked down at the pocket player in her hands. "They'll keep coming for me, won't they?" "Probably," Jack said. "But the more you run, the more places you'll see and the more songs you'll hear." Soren smiled faintly. "Then I'm not stopping." Jack glanced at her. "Good, because I've got a feeling you're just getting started." 3 days later, Jack's shuttle dropped out of hyperspace above a dusty, red-brown planet. The surface below was dotted with glowing cities surrounded by endless desert. "This," Jack said, adjusting the controls, "is Cora's 9. Officially, it's just a mining world. Unofficially," he gave her a sly grin, "it's home to the biggest underground concert scene in this sector." Soren's heart jumped. Underground, as in hidden, as in the kind of show you'll never forget, Jack said, "but keep your hood up." Not everyone here is friendly to strangers. The spaceport was loud and chaotic, a mix of cargo haulers, private ships, and street vendors calling out to travelers. The air smelled of metal, spice, and smoke from old engine exhausts. Jack led her through winding streets, lit by flickering neon signs in a dozen languages. She could hear music spilling from every corner, quick bursts of drum beats. The low hum of alien bass. Sharp strings that sliced the air. It wasn't the same as Haven's Port. This was wilder, dirtier, more dangerous. They reached a small, grimy door at the end of a narrow alley. A huge reptilian bouncer blocked the way. Jack leaned in. "Tell Rax the sky's on fire," he said. The bouncer's eyes narrowed. Then he stepped aside. Inside, the sound hit her like a shockwave. The floor vibrated with deep bass. The air was thick with heat and the smell of sweat and smoke. Hundreds of people, humans, aliens, hybrids packed into the space, moving as one to the pounding rhythm. On the stage, a band tore through a song so fast and fierce that Soren could barely keep up. Guitars screamed, drums pounded like artillery, and the singer's voice ripped through the air. Soren froze in awe. She had never seen so much energy in one place. Every face in the crowd glistened with sweat. Every body moved with a beat like it was life itself. Jack leaned close to shout over the noise. "Welcome to freedom, Varelia style." They pushed through the crowd, ending up near the edge of the stage. Soren's hood had slipped back, her pale skin and large eyes catching the flashes of stage light. She didn't notice a tall, cloaked figure at the back watching her closely. The music surged, and Soren felt something break open inside her. She was moving with the crowd now, her body matching the rhythm, her heart pounding in time with the drums. Jack laughed and joined her, clapping to the beat. For a moment, there was no fear, no danger, just the music. When the set ended, the band left the stage, and a DJ took over. The music shifted to deep, pulsing electronic beats. Jack headed toward the bar, and Soren stayed near the edge of the dance floor. She was still lost in the rhythm when a voice spoke behind her. "Enjoying yourself, little Varelian?" She spun around. The cloaked figure was closer now, his face shadowed. But she caught the glint of a Varelian enforcement badge. Under his coat, her blood ran cold. Before she could move, the man's hand shot out, grabbing her arm. "You've caused quite a mess," he said, his voice low and cold. "You've been seen with Corwin. You've been to Haven's Port. You've been spreading your sickness to others." "I'm not spreading anything," she snapped, trying to pull away. "You're infected with music," he said, "and that is a crime." He reached for a small communicator on his belt. But before he could speak into it, a hand clamped down on his shoulder. Jack. The human's grip was iron. "I think you've got the wrong girl," Jack said, his voice casual but dangerous. The enforcer sneered. "Step aside, human. This is Varelian business." "Yeah," Jack said, tightening his hold. "And she's under my protection." The enforcer moved fast, swinging a stun baton at Jack's head. Jack ducked, the weapon slicing the air. The crowd barely noticed fights weren't rare here. Jack slammed his shoulder into the man's chest, knocking him back. "Time to go," he shouted to Soren. They pushed through the crowd, weaving between dancers and dodging the bright flashes of the light show. The enforcer was right behind them, shoving people aside. Soren's heart pounded in her ears. The music felt different. Now not just joy, but urgency. Danger. They burst out the side door into another alley. Jack slammed the door behind them and bolted the latch. "He's not alone," Jack said. "If one's here, more are close." Soren's mind raced. "How did they find me?" Jack shot her a look. "That music player the band gave you, did you notice anything strange about it?" Her stomach dropped. It had a blinking light. Jack cursed. "It's a tracker. They've been following you since Haven's Port." They ran through the twisting back streets, neon signs flashing past. Jack kept glancing over his shoulder, scanning for pursuit. "Can we get to the ship?" Soren asked. "Not without going through the main gate," Jack said. And if they've got more agents, it'll be locked down. They rounded a corner and nearly collided with 3 more enforcers. Jack grabbed her hand and ducked into another alley. Looks like we're going to Plan C. What's Plan C? She asked breathlessly. Hope I make one up before they catch us. The narrow alley was a dead end. Soren's chest tightened as the 3 enforcers closed in from the far side, their visors glowing faintly in the dark. Behind them, the music from the underground club thumped faintly, muffled by thick walls. Here, the sound felt far away, like freedom slipping out of reach. Jack didn't stop moving. He spun to a side wall, found a steel access hatch, and kicked it hard. The panel bent with a sharp clang. In there, he said, prying it open. Soren stared into the dark hole. Where does it go? Jack grinned. Down, we like down. She climbed in first, the smell of dust and rust filling her lungs. Jack followed, pulling the hatch shut behind them just as the enforcers reached the alley. They slid down a steep maintenance chute, landing hard on a grated floor deep beneath the city. Dim red lights glowed along the walls, and the air was warm, heavy with the hum of machinery. So our YN stood, brushing grime off her coat. What is this place? Jack's eyes scanned the shadows. Service tunnels. The underbelly of Cora's 9. Half the station doesn't even know it exists. From somewhere ahead, faint music echoed soft, strange, almost haunting. They followed the sound through twisting tunnels until they emerged into a massive chamber. It was unlike anything Soren had seen. Dozens of people, humans, aliens, hybrids, sat in circles on the floor, each with an instrument in their hands. The air was alive with sound, but not loud like the club. Here, the music was slower, deeper, carrying a weight that seemed to press against her skin. A tall, bearded human turned toward them. New faces, he said, and one of them's Varelian. The room went quiet. Jack raised his hands. We're not here to cause trouble. Just looking for a way out before the enforcers make things ugly. The man's gaze softened slightly. You've already found trouble then. And if they're after her? His eyes shifted to Soren. It means she's already chosen. Her side, Soren frowned. My side. The man stepped closer. You left the silence. That means you belong to the sound now. And once you belong to the sound, you don't hide from it to fight for it. Soren hesitated. I'm not a fighter. The man smiled faintly. Music makes fighters out of all of us. Before she could reply, a harsh metallic bang echoed through the tunnels. Voices shouted in the distance. And found us, Jack muttered. The group in the chamber moved quickly, stashing instruments, pulling back into shadow. The bearded man tossed Jack a small device. Old drainage tunnel, that way. But it's unstable, flooded in parts. Move fast. Jack grabbed Soren's hand. Come on. They ran into the narrow tunnel, water sloshing around their boots. The walls were slimy, the air damp and cold. Behind them, the enforcers' voices grew louder. A beam of light swept the walls ahead. Jack swore under his breath. They've cut us off. A shot cracked through the tunnel, sizzling into the wall beside Soren's head. She ducked, her heart pounding. Jack shoved her toward a side ladder. Up, go. She climbed, hands slipping on the wet rungs. At the top, she pushed open a rusted grate and crawled out onto a dark street high above the main port. Jack pulled himself out behind her just as the enforcer's boots clanged on the ladder below. He kicked the grate shut and jammed a steel rod through the frame. That'll slow them, he said, breathing hard. They were in a forgotten part of the city, now empty buildings, cracked walls, broken signs. The only light came from flickering lamps and the glow of far-off towers. Jack leaned against a wall, catching his breath. We can't stay on Cora's 9. We've burned this stop. Soren's voice was steady, even though her hands were shaking. Then we go somewhere else. Jack looked at her for a long moment. You know, the longer you run, the more they'll want you. You're becoming a symbol. A symbol. She said, confused. You're a Varelian carrying music across borders, Jack said. They hate that. They're scared of it. Before she could answer, a faint sound reached her ears. It wasn't machinery or wind, it was a melody. She turned toward it, drawn like a moth to light. Down the street, a young human sat on the steps of a crumbling building, strumming a battered guitar. His voice was soft but full of warmth, the kind that made the cold street feel alive. Soren walked toward him without thinking. The boy looked up and smiled. You want to sing? She hesitated, glancing back at Jack. Jack's lips curved into a faint grin. Go ahead. She sat beside the boy, her hands resting on her knees. The guitar's sound was steady and simple. She didn't know the words, but she hummed along, her voice blending with his. For the first time, she felt the music not just in her ears, but in her own breath, her own chest. It was part of her now. When they finished, the boy handed her the guitar. Your turn. Soren looked at Jack, uncertain. He gave a small nod. She strummed awkwardly at first, then found a rhythm. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. And in that moment, she understood exactly what the bearded man in the tunnels had meant. Once you belong to the sound, you can't go back. A sudden blast of static erupted in the air. An open broadcast from the Varelian Enforcement Authority. This is an official order. The voice boomed from hidden speakers across the city. The fugitive Soren Kellis is to be captured. Immediately, she is considered dangerous to the stability of Varalia and all allied worlds. A reward of 50,000 credits will be given for her capture. Jack's jaw tightened. Well, he said, that'll make things interesting. Soren held the guitar tighter. She had a choice now: keep running or stand and fight for the music that had set her free. The reward notice spread across Korra's 9 like fire. By morning, Soren's face was on every flickering hollyboard in the slums, her name whispered in bars and alleys. Some looked at her with curiosity, others with greed. Jack had moved the Drifter's luck to a hidden landing pad in the outskirts, but he knew they couldn't hide for long. 50,000 credits is enough to make even friends turn on us, he said, tightening the straps on his jacket. Soren sat on a crate, the guitar across her lap. Then we leave. Jack shook his head. We can't outrun this forever. They'll keep chasing you from one world to the next, unless... He paused, watching her. You make it impossible for them to silence you. Her eyes narrowed. How? Play, Jack said simply. Not in secret. Not in some back alley. Play where everyone can hear. Make them choose between shutting you up or admitting that music has already spread too far to kill. The idea burned in her mind the whole day. By nightfall, she'd made her choice. The biggest open plaza on Korra's 9 was the Market Circla. Wide space ringed with food stalls, traders, and crowds from every corner of the galaxy. It was also under constant security watch, which made it perfect. Jack stood with her in the shadow of an old tower, scanning the guards. You start playing. We've got maybe 10 minutes before the enforcers show up. Soren took a deep breath. 10 minutes is enough. They stepped into the open. The noise of the market washed over them, shouts, haggling. The hiss of steam from cooking stalls. Soren sat cross-legged right in the center, the guitar in her hands. Her fingers trembled at first, but when she strummed the first chord, the sound cut through the chaos like a blade of light. People turned. Jack stood nearby, arms crossed, watching. The melody began simple, steady. Her voice joined in, soft at first, then stronger. She didn't know all the human words, so she sang with feeling instead, letting her voice carry the emotion she couldn't put into language. The crowd began to gather. A child stepped closer. Smiling, a miner set down his heavy bag and tapped his boot to the beat. A trader clapped in time. Her voice rose higher. The plaza grew quiet, except for the music. Even the guards hesitated, unsure if they should move in. Jack's lips curled into a grin. It was working. Then the enforcers came. 6 of them, pushing through the crowd, weapons in hand. Soren Kellis. The lead one barked. "Cease this act and come with us." She kept playing. The lead enforcer stepped forward. "This is your final warning." And then something happened that no one expected. Someone in the crowd began to sing with her, a human miner. Then an alien with 4 arms added a deep harmony. Soon, dozens of voices joined in, the sound swelling until it filled the plaza. The enforcers froze. They couldn't arrest the whole market. Soren met the lead. Enforcer's gaze. "You can't stop it anymore," she said, her fingers strumming harder. "The silence is over." The crowd roared with applause. The enforcer stepped back, unsure. The moment they hesitated, Jack was at her side. "Time to go," he whispered. They slipped into the crowd as the music kept going without them. Dozens. Still playing and singing. Back at the Drifter's Luck. Soren sat in the co-pilot seat, staring out at the stars as they lifted off. "They'll still hunt me," she said quietly. "Yeah," Jack agreed. "But now it's not just you. They'll have to fight." "You lit a fire today." She looked down at the guitar in her lap. Her hands didn't shake anymore. "I'm not running from it," Jack smiled. "Good, because I think the galaxy's ready for its first Varelian rock star." The ship's engines roared, and they jumped to hyperspace, carrying with them the sound that no law could kill. And somewhere on Cora's 9, in the market plaza, the music played on.